Hello everyone, welcome back to Powerful Nothing, a Magic the Gathering Cube podcast. I'm your host Dan, and as always, I'm joined by James. James, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. So, at time of recording, the new set has been up on Arena for like an hour, and Arena is not even open on my laptop, which is a measure of dedication to this podcast. So, you'll better appreciate it, dear listener.
You're doing so good, James. I'm very proud of you. Yeah, that's right. Today is part 2 of our Cube set review for The Secrets of Strixhaven. Last week, we covered white, blue, black, and red. A link down to that will be down in the show notes below. This week, we are covering green, multicolored, and a land. Also down in the show notes, there will be a link to the card gallery if you want to see the cards that we're talking about, and also a link to the video version if you want to watch it on YouTube. While you're there, please consider giving the podcast a 5-star review, a thumbs up, all that good stuff. Before we get into the episode today, probably worth mentioning, we've actually played with some of the cards now, because obviously last weekend at time of recording was pre-release. I had a lot of fun with mine, but James, let's start with you. How was your pre-release, and what do you think of the set?
Yeah, I had a great time. The set seems a lot of fun, actually. Really synergistic guild pairs. A lot of the decks I played against seem to have some really good synergies going on as well. Obviously, pre-release now really the seeded booster thing. So you get one booster, which is sort of exclusively cards in a specific guild. I got Prismari. The Prismari stuff all seems great. The spell synergies really seem to work. I played against some really good Convicts deck, a good Silver Quill deck. The set seems really sweet. It seems like the mechanics are well supported, but without being too linear. I'm excited to play more of it.
Nice. Yeah, I really like the set as well. I went 2-1 with a perfectly serviceable Lorehold deck. We made the, not mistake, but we arrived 5 minutes after the start time, so the only pack available to me was the Boros one. My deck was cool. It was very much a curve out, try and kill them. The best card in my pool by far. It wasn't one we touched on last week. It's a white card called Antiquities on the Loose. 1 white sorcery, create 2 red and white spirit creature tokens. If this spell was cast from anywhere other than your hand, put a counter on each spirit you control. Then it has flashback for 4 white. The games I drew this, I won. The games I didn't draw this, I lost. My final round opponent had a bit of a nutso deck, though. James, I got Crackle with Powered for 20.
That sounds great.
Yeah. He had another artifact that basically doubled up all his mana for instant and sorceries. It's like a 3-mana artifact that doubles up all your mana for instant and sorceries. And then, out of nowhere, 20'd me. So that was fun.
Oh, sick.
It was a cool deck, to be fair. Yeah, it was very cool. If you're going to lose to 20 damage.
Yeah. No, there were some really powerful, expensive spells in the set, I think. Yeah. And they all seem very castable. There's a lot of ways to make treasure, a lot of ways to generate a lot of mana. I had the Prismari Dragon. It's nice. 7 mana, 7/7 flyer, maybe. Stats not relevant. It says all of your instants and sorceries have Storm.
That seems nice.
If you untap with it in a Prismari deck, you really should win the game. I did a lot of deal 3 to you 18 6 times and the opponent dies. But they were normally dead to being attacked by a 7/7 flyer, but of course you've got to try and do it with spells, right?
Yeah, my first round opponent had the Quandrix. I'm assuming it's just called Quandrix, the dragon that gives all your instant and sorceries Cascade. I was very fortunate that they hit 2 counter spells off of that, and not the other vast array of good instant and sorceries in their deck. But yeah. So that seems a lot of fun. Looking forward to getting my hands on some of these cards and testing them out properly in Cube. But I think that's probably a good place for us to kick off with the set review. James, we're starting with green today. Take it away with Ambitious Augmenter.
Yeah, so Ambitious Augmenter is a single green for a 1/1 with Increment. So Increment, I don't think we met last in this first part of the set review.
I think this is the last of our new mechanics.
Yeah, so Increment says...
Don't hold me to that, but...
Increment says, whenever you cast a spell, if the amount of mana you spent is greater than this creature's power or toughness, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. So in this case, for creatures 1/1, if you cast a 2-mana spell, you'll get a counter on it. Its power and toughness will then be 2, so you'd need to cast a 3-mana spell to get another counter, and so on and so forth. So 1-mana 1/1 increment, already pretty solid, I think. And then it also says, when this creature dies, if it had 1 or more counters on it, create a 0/0 green and blue fractal creature token, then put this creature's counters on that token. So it's going to die into a token that is 1 smaller than the creature was, right? So if you just kill it as a 1/1, you get a 0/0 fractal that goes away. If this gets up to being, say, a 4/4, you'll get a 3/3 fractal. This is pretty powerful, I think. We've seen cards like Experiment 1 or Pelt Collector, that sort of growing green 1-drop, be pretty good in Cube in the past, but those all have the limitation of they only trigger off playing creatures. This triggers off any spell, so this is a much more flexible little growing threat. And honestly, like, not the sort of thing we see in green that often. So it's quite a nice little aggressive 1-drop for a green decks. It's you could theoretically put it in a more sort of aristocracy deck, but really, the issue there is, right, if you sack it straight away, you get the 0/0. So you only get 1 sacrifice trigger out of it. It's probably fine there because it will grow by just casting your spells. But I think probably its best home is maybe a sort of Teamer, red-green, something like that, tempo, aggressive deck. But this seems quite powerful in that home to me.
Yeah, I quite like this card. Like, we touched on like the Miracle Grow archetype a little bit last week when we talked about Molten Core Maestro. That's the red one that when you cast an instant or sorcery, you put a counter on it. This is kind of in that similar sort of vein. I think that's what James was mentioning when he kind of touched on the Teamer deck. It's kind of like green creatures that grow a bit of burn and a bit of card draw and counter magic in there as well. Like I'm a big fan of the Miracle Grow archetype. It as a deck, it's definitely struggled in more higher power level cubes, or by that I mean more the cards that were good in it, like Tarmogoyf, have kind of been power crept out. So if we're getting more cards like the Maestro and like Ambitious Augmenter, maybe it could make a comeback. I think this card is cool. Like my gut is lower powered level cubes for the time being, but Increment, I do think it is a cool mechanic. Like it gets better with X spells where you can control how much mana you're spending on it. I generally found at pre-release, like one of my opponents did really like curve out like then Increment thing and then played a 2-drop, a 3-drop, and a 4-drop, all X spells, and like that won't be every environment, but it's just worth noting it does get better with those.
Yeah, for sure. It's slightly different from some of the other Miracle Grow creatures, right? In that you have to be casting bigger spells. Like, for a lot of the traditional Miracle Grow builds, you're like trying to cast lots of spells to grow your creatures, and that means you're maxing out on cheap spells, right? Which doesn't work brilliantly with this. I think this is more of just an aggressive green card, actually, right? Like,
yeah, probably actually, yeah.
Most green decks, like, you cast this on turn 1, it'll be a 3/3 very quickly. And then, like, you've spent 1 mana on a 3/3 that dies into a 2/2. Like, that's just a really good rate. Yeah. Like, you don't, I think, have to do too much work. I think any green deck that wants to curve out is just going to quite like this.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. I don't think you need to play this in a bunch of ops. It is just play this, play a 2-drop that attacks, play a 3-drop that attacks, and kind of then go up the curve that way. So okay, I can see that.
It does have the downside that, it's a bad top deck late, right? But it's a 1-mana creature. What you can only expect that so much.
Exactly. Like if it was going in a cube, it would be like the only other 1-drops we really won are they're going to be Mana Dorks or like Hex Drinker maybe, but that's just a really good Modern Horizons card. So it's hard to compare it to that.
Yeah, for sure. Figure of Fable, I guess, kind of counts from.
There we go. That one slaps. Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, the thing green always has, right, is do you want the aggressive 1-drop or do you want the Mana Dork? And that's obviously going to vary a lot deck to deck and cube.
Yeah, definitely. I feel we're in the higher power level cubes. We are in kind of a inflection point where, because green isn't so much about, it's not so much about like casting 8 drops, but it is still about casting 3 and 4 drops ahead of curve. So that's kind of, we're still running a bunch of mana dorks, but I think it is generally less than it was. Like, we're not like as deep with them as it was a few years ago. So there might still be some runes for some more aggressive creatures to kind of get in there and start pushing the deck in different directions.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I still really like the Hierarchs and the Birds of Paradise ones, the dorks that fix you in the powerful cubes, because getting those good 3 and 4 drops out early is really strong. But your green decks are going to want to be a lot of colors most of the time, and so I'm a lot lower on like Elvish Mystic than I used to be. So it's possible you could run one fewer of that sort of effect and try something like this instead.
No, I think that's fair. And yeah, for me, a lot of the decks I'm enjoying in my green X decks are more beating down, either with like a Scythecat Cub or like an Ursine Monstrosity, something like that. So yeah, definitely room to do some different things there, I think. But let's keep it rolling. We have the green Emeritus up next. This is Emeritus of Abundance. It is 2 and a green for a 3/4 creature elf druid with vigilance, and this creature enters prepared. When this creature attacks, if you control 8 or more lands, this creature becomes prepared. As per last week, all these prepared creatures, they can cast a spell. The spell on this Emeritus is Regrowth. 1 and a green, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. I think this is a fairly good one. The potential of a repeatable Regrowth is really nice. And like, because we don't generally run bad cards in Cube, being able to repeatedly get a card back is going to be good. Like, you are going to have a real card to get back quite easily with this. The thing with this card is it's not truly repeatable. Like, having to get 8 lands and then be able to attack with this creature, and it also has to survive combat because Regrowth is a sorcery. Like, those are hoops to get through. Like if you have a busted spell in your graveyard, your opponent will try and trade off with this quite aggressively if they can. If you have that Time Walk in the graveyard, it's not going to be a freebie. You're going to have to get through for combat damage and hope it survives. Like, the fact the body on this is quite nice is a base level 3 mana 3/4 with vigilance is good. We like that. Like, I think I've been running Sentinel of the Nameless City, and this does seem better than that. But in terms of power level where this ends up, my gut is this doesn't end up in the highest power level cubes. Like, I think people will test it because people love a Regrowth, but just because those cubes want efficient spells, they can just run Regrowth already, or they can run a card like Tameo, Collector of Tales, which has which is a Planeswalker with a Regrowth attached to it. Like, I quite like this in cubes where they are a bit slower, where you have time to build the engine and want to get a card back. Like I don't think this is in a cube where Time Walk is the extra turn spell. I don't think it's powerful enough, but in my head, I love it in a cube where something like Time Warp, like the 5 mana version, or Temporal Manipulation is our extra turn spell. In those kind of environments, I think this card will be a lot better.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's tough to get to the 8 lands and have the real attack. But it is just a solid value feature. The stats are really good. The stats also sort of complement the ability quite well, right? It's a slow card advantage recursion spell, and they've given you nice defensive stats that block well with it. I quite like that. The attacking thing, yeah, like most games it won't come up, but they do kind of have to respect it, especially with if you have any sort of time warp effect in your deck. Because if you ever have the spot where you have the time warp and the mana and they can't kill this in combat, they do just lose, right? Because it's like you've assembled Vault Key, right? Like, once you can do that once, you can do it every turn for the rest of the game. So there's like maybe something there, but most of the time this is a dude that blocks well, gets you a key spell back. You can also flicker this, right? It's not as efficient as just flickering something like Eternal Witness, because you obviously have to cast for regrowth each time, but this has way better stats than Eternal Witness, so it's maybe a trade-off you could be interested in. Again, as with all of these prepared creatures, like the Displacer Kitten combo as well. That's
Oh, Jesus, yeah.
Yeah, that's a nice little enabling.
We talked about that a bit last week, didn't we? Yeah. I hope everyone bought their Displacer Kittens. You were warned. We gave you.
Do we have sufficient reach to spike the price of Displacer Kitten? My guess is no, but we'll find out, I guess. I think mostly this is about casting your 1 regrowth, blocking well, keeping you alive. Maybe you flicker it later.
No, it does seem like a fun one. Like, yeah. I think people will test this card quite a lot, but yeah, I think it'll find a place in a bunch of cubes as long as it's not. Actually, it's not super expensive. Again, we're in between that window of pre-release and release, and it's about $5. So that seems like the perfect kind of level for like a more budget or a budget more entry level cube. It's not going to be something stupid, probably like the black one, I'm assuming is. But anyway, let's keep it going, James. Talk to us about Environmental Scientist. This seems like a pretty nice uncommon.
Yeah, for sure. This card's cracked, man. It's absolutely insane. Something of all the busted cards we've got in the last few years, this is the one where I'm like, the power creep is real, you know?
They did it. Yeah. They broke you. It took 3 Modern Horizons. It took multiple trips to New York City. But no, it's Environmental. Well, with all the anticipation, then, James, please read it.
I sure will.
Read Environmental Scientist.
Environmental Scientist is 1 and a green for 2/2. Says when this creature enters, you may search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle. Civic Wayfinder was already good, man. We love a Civic Wayfinder. It's just a whole mana less. Absolutely outrageous. And at uncommon as well. I think people are going to underrate how good this effect is my prediction. Like, the difference... So normally we get this sort of 2-mana green creature that replaces itself is a 1/1, right? They're always 1/1s. It's Elvish Visionary, you get the Satyr Wayfinder, all this stuff, always a 1/1. We don't even normally get the searching for a basic land that fixes you. Putting that up to 2/2, like 2/2s do just trade with real cards in like a lot of games.
Yeah.
Fixing, replacing itself on top of that, this card's really powerful. It's just going to make all your green decks so much more consistent having one of these. Like, even your 2-color green decks will love to have one of these. But if you're playing 3+ colors, this is going to be great because it gives you that fixing, it gives you card advantage, but without falling behind on board. All for just 2 mana. It's I think for like Peasant Cube, it's an absolute auto include. Probably going to be a pretty high pick. And probably even like most mid-power level cubes, I think, are going to really like this card as well. Probably doesn't make it in powered cube, but I don't think it's even outrageous just to try it, you know?
No, I'd agree. I think it's a very solid card. Like it is effectively 2 mana for 2/2 that draws you a card. Like, I know it's 2026, but that's still good. Like, I like this card. I think this will, like we mentioned, we touched on Flicker a lot in the last set, and we mentioned it with the Emeritus. Worth mentioning again with Environmental Scientist. It is a card that likes to be flickered. I know Flicker is generally Azorius, but if you're splashing into a 3rd color, it's often green for cards like this. I don't have too much more to say. I think it's a very nice card. The only thing I would say is, I personally wouldn't be cutting like cards like Satyr Wayfinder specifically for this. I'd find room somewhere else, just purely because Satyr Wayfinders and such, they're the ones that mill you some cards and then you can get a land back. Those are quite good if you're doing graveyard stuff. That's the one downside to this card, is that it's generically quite good, but it's not like synergistically good, and that's kind of like the one angle that the Satyr Wayfinder has on it. But then that's only for cubes who are doing specifically some kind of graveyard self-milly thing in their green style decks. If you're not doing that, then I think, strict upgrade probably is a fair way to say.
Yeah, because the fixing's so nice, right? Like, Satyr Wayfinder doesn't really fix you. Like, sure, you might get lucky and hit your splash color, but you're not that likely to.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah. Definitely another one to add to the list to test. Let's keep it going. Let's talk about Pet Rescuer next. This card is 2 and a green for a 2/2 creature Dryad Druid. It has at the beginning of each upkeep, if you don't control a pest creature token, create a 1/1 black and green pest creature token with, when this token dies, you gain 1 life. And also has the ability, if you would gain life, you gain that much life plus 1 instead. So this is a cool little card. Like, it's very reminiscent, and it kind of feels like a color shifted Ophiomancer. Definitely not as good as Ophiomancer. The death touch on the snake that makes, like, Ophiomancer makes a 1/1 snake with death touch, and that really does a great job at holding down the board while also making you fodder in your black aristocrat deck. And this is green, which isn't traditionally the go-to color for aristocrats, but it is definitely something that's getting better. Like, as a third color in an aristocrat deck, I think green is really solid. And while the pests don't have death touch, they do gain you life, which is going to do a solid job of the Ophiomancer thing of holding down the board and stabilizing you against that aggro deck. Like, it's not going to trade off with their 6/6 because it doesn't have death touch, but it will keep you alive while you further your game plan, and that is quite nice. The life gain aspect of this card is interesting as well. Like, it's traditionally, again, not something that green really does. Like, the life gain, like, one thing that Strixhaven generally does is it turns color archetypes and color pairs, like, upside down. Like, we don't generally see that much life gain support in green. There is some stuff there, but if you were doing it, my gut is that it would be what your Selesnya section is doing. Like the payoffs generally for life gain are in white. That being said, there is some stuff that might be there with food, like gaining an extra life of all your food. It's not nothing. It's a cool card. I wanted to mention it because Ophiomancer was a staple in cubes for such a long time. We're getting effectively a card that reminds us of that. So I thought it was worth mentioning. But James, what do you think about Pet Rescuer?
Yeah, it's an interesting card. I very much misread it at first because all the other pests in this set are when it attacks, it gains for life. And this is the old pest version where it gains it on death.
Yeah, this is from the Commander product.
Okay,
so
I guess
they've changed it a little bit. Yeah,
I was going to say, if that's in the draft set, that is going to be very confusing. I think this card is not weak, but I think you kind of need to care about the life gain, like that bonus life gain text, because if you're just in it for creating tokens to sacrifice, I think there are just more efficient ways of doing that, right? And yeah, so I think you've got to care about that gaining extra life. Like, you have other life gain stuff going on outside of just this card. But it's not a bad card. You're getting 2 life back every time you trump. So if your opponent's plan is to attack you on the ground, this is going to do a pretty good job at stopping them. But yeah, not the sort of stone wall that Ophiomancer is by any means.
Yeah, seems fun, but yeah, I think it does have a ceiling. Just with that being said, this next one is a little bit bigger. James, talk to us about Varslan's Scavenger.
Sure is. Varslan's Scavenger is 1 green for a 4/4 creature bear druid. It has Death Touch, and this creature enters prepared. And the attached spell is Bind to Life. It's an instant that says mill 7 cards, then put a creature card from among them onto the battlefield. 3 mana 4/4 Death Touch is a really nice starting point.
It's actually quite big.
Yeah.
But everything we're going to say about this card is caveated by the fact it's a 3 mana 4/4.
Yeah, it doesn't really need the Death Touch. It was already killing all the stuff that blocked
That's just showing off at that point.
And the 4/4 that beats down great, but it also blocks great. And if you are leaning into a bit of a longer game, the spell is a really nice place to put 5 mana. I don't think this is really a card where we're that likely to be, trying to cheat some 10-drop creature into play. I think this is more just, we're a creature dense deck. We've got some pretty high impact creatures to hit. I'd want to have some good 4 and 5 mana creatures in my deck, and that's a great place to put 5 mana, and you're kind of getting it for free, right? Yeah, you wouldn't want to be like super low curve, but I think you don't need to be trying to abuse that part of the card. I think this is just a really good rate creature that gives you a really nice mana sink later on.
Yeah, I'd agree. This does feel like the type of card that, it's while you may like draw it up in your head that you cheat in your 8-drop with this, realistically you're going to cheat in your second or the next in line of undercosted green beaters, and that's how you're winning, and that's probably fine. I think we talk about one of these in every set now. There is always a green creature that in some way can cheat something into play. I think I like this more than some of the other ones we've seen recently, just because it's a bit easier. It's lower on the mana curve than, like we talked about, like Michelangelo Improviser. That was the sneak one in the last set. This is in the card file of green rare that cheats something into play. But just the fact that, it's a 3 mana 4/4 with all upside. That means in any kind of like budget mid-powered cube, this is a good card. I could see them testing this in higher power level cubes, and it will probably still be fine because it will just kill people by itself. And then when you in a green deck, you're often likely to have an excess of mana at some point in the game. Spend 5 mana, get another threat. It's not that hard to do.
Yeah, for sure. Also, like, interesting in a graveyard deck, right? As well, right? Just mill 7 cards is a lot of cards.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and in my cube, most of the aggressive creatures are kind of graveyard, or they care about it in some way. So obviously, in my cube, we have Vengevine, but like we also have things like Ursine Monstrosity, like even like Simian Simulacrum. I'm looking at that card. That's got Unearth. Like, there's plenty of like graveyardy stuff. So yeah. Me personally, I do like it's not a graveyard matters card, like, but it will go in that deck and it will feel quite nice. So definitely a plus point for me.
Yeah, for sure. You will also probably lose some games because you milled 7 cards and the game went really long. But you can live with that.
Tight. All right, let's keep it going. We have our last green card for the day, and there's definitely a world where they considered this to be the green emeritus, but let's read it out anyway. Yavimaya Bloomsage is 2 and a green for a 2/2 creature dryad druid with, at the beginning of your end step, put a +1 counter on target creature you control. Then if that creature has power 7 or greater, this creature becomes prepared. So this is another prepared creature. The prepared spell is Channel. Green for sorcery. Until end of turn, anytime you could activate a mana ability, you may pay 1 life. If you do, add a colorless. So this is importantly in the Commander product, just in case any standard players were worrying they might have to deal with Channel being legal. Don't worry, we're good. But Commander players, cool, you get a Channel now. We know that Channel is a very broken Magic card. It's banned in basically every format, I think. It is restricted in Vintage and whatever Timeless is. And legal, obviously, in Cube, which is where most people, I think, will have played with it and know that it's a very strong card. With that being said, though, I do feel like they've played this card specifically quite safe. Like, to get Channel, to be able to cast the card Channel with Yavimaya Bloomsage, we basically already have to have our cheat target in play. We have to have a creature with basically that. At the beginning of our end step, we have to have a creature with 6 power in play. So that's realistically in Cube quite close to the top end of our green beef. We also then have to untap with this creature because the counter goes on at the end step. It becomes prepared. Unless we have a way of casting spells at instant speed, we have to untap with this card. And then we also have to have a colorless payoff in hand. My gut is all of those things are going to be tough. Like, would I rather spend 3 mana on this and then have to go through all those hoops, or would I rather play the last card we talked about and just kill them? That's the reality of where we're dealing with this. Like, this does get more doable to an extent if you're planning on going like quite late with your cube. Like, if you're in a cube that's slow enough for big grindy ball stores to appear, I'm fine if you include this and a fireball, and that's how the game finally ends, because I'm kind of, the older I get, the more fine I am with games ending. Like, it's fine, don't worry about it. This technically is also a life gain payoff for what it's worth. Like, get a bunch of life, it gives you more mana. That's kind of, channel is also technically a life gain payoff, but it's broken enough as it is. Like a lot of these emeritus or emeritus adjacent cards, I do like the fact that it gives us these broken cards in lower powered settings. So I could see myself trying this in like my Treat Yourself cube, where games do go a bit long, and it would be nice there. It is a thing of like, oh, you do your big thing and then there's still more gameplay. That's not every cube. That is a fraction of cubes where I think it could work. Going to be strong in Commander, but not one for most cubes would be my gut. What do you think about Channel on a stick, James?
I think it's pretty bad, and it's kind of a shame because
you love Channel, James.
I do love Channel. Channel is so cool, and how often are they going to get to print a card that says Channel on it? And I love this design space, by the way. Like, these cards are all so much cooler because they actually get to have the name of the old iconic card, right?
Yes.
Like, if it was just a activated, like, you can spend some life to get some mana, that's way less cool than calling it Channel. So that part's awesome. But they just made it so bad, and they made it's so hard to get there. And actually what this is just a rubbish Luminarch aspirant, right?
Yep.
Because, like, it's saying...
Yeah, that's true, actually.
Okay, have you already won the game? Great, you can win the game with slightly fewer life points. Like, we don't need that, you know? You've got to already have the giant thing in play. That's not the point. So they like took the power level out of getting to cast the Channel part and put it in the counter ability, which I get is meant to set up for Channel, but it would take so long to get there off any normal board state. It feels like this card would have been cooler if they sort of got rid of the Luminarch aspirant part and put that power level into making it easier to get to the Channel, you know? Like, Power 7 is, to me, like kind of a crazy number to pick there, you know?
Yeah.
7 is really a lot. But yeah, I think this is mostly 3 mana Luminarch aspirant, and we've seen those before. They're not very good. Do you remember Ordinary Tumblewag from...
it's
no,
currently
exactly. No, you don't, because it's rubbish.
No, it's currently in my cube.
Oh.
It might be coming out for Varsland Scavenger, but don't worry about it.
And that card's better than this card. That card, like, doubles counters of something when it attacks. Rant over. Make better Channel cards, Wizards.
No, and what you have said there is... It is worth mentioning vibe factor. Like, this card is cooler, I think, than Varsland Scavenger because I don't care what Bind to Light is. It doesn't have a feeling to me. Whereas, like, Channel, like, it's at least kind of it's at least a thought of something cool.
Yeah.
But it's effectively, this is also legal. Like, I can see why they played it safe because this is also technically like legacy legal as well. So I know we don't care, but people do. People do play Legacy.
What are you going to do with this Legacy? Like, pay 5 mana, assuming I already have a 7 power creature in play to get my Channel online.
I'm saying that's why they played it safe. That's why they played it safe. Also, I will get ahead of this. We love Legacy on this podcast.
I just feel like they've made it kind of a trap, you know? Because the thing with Channel is it does ask you to put quite specific threats in your deck, right? Which are normally pretty bad when you don't have the Channel thing going. And this is just not going to get to cast Channel enough of the time to justify putting those threats in your deck.
Yeah, I'd agree. It is tricky. Like if it was... The thing that I find, like, if it... We won't dwell on this too long because redesigning the card is always like a dangerous trap to get down. But like, if it was like total power, they've done that a couple of times. Like if it was like your board state had total power 7 or 10, so you could spread it out a bit, that would be a bit better for me. But yeah, one like by the time this is online, you've already done your game plan, and that's, I think, probably the biggest thing against this card. But let's keep it going, James. We have a bunch of other cool cards to get through today. We're moving on to multicolored now. James, talk to me about Hardened Academic.
Yeah, this is a good one. So Hardened Academic is a red and a white for a 2/1 creature bird cleric. It has flying and haste, and you can discard a card to give it lifelink until end of turn. And whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. So 2 mana, 2/1 flying haste is already just like a really solid little beatdown threat. This ability could be really strong if it works, if you can enable it reliably. The question I kind of have around this is, yes, this is the thing Boros is doing in this set. I think if you're drafting this set, you'll have some Boros decks that can do this trivially easily, and this card will be amazing. How many cubes is that the case for? It is kind of my issue, because this isn't a thing that Boros does in many sets in Magic, you know? Normally, the archetypes that translate really well for cube are ones where you get a ton of redundancy, because they say like blue-red spells, right? There's blue-red is instants and sorceries matter in like every other set in Magic history. Therefore, you get a bunch of cards from a bunch of different sets, and you get to make that archetype work really easily, whilst adding a bunch of really cool cards. It feels like to make Boros cards leave your graveyard work, you'd need to run a lot of Strixhaven cards specifically, which is fine. You could maybe do that. Maybe if you're like leaning into some Strixhaven themes, that could be really cool. But I think for a lot of cubes, it's going to be a bit tough to make this ability really pop. That being said, it's still a very solid card, because 2 mana, 2/1 flying haste is just good. The lifelink thing will come up, that matters, and occasionally you'll get an incidental counter, right? But it's not going to be a thing that's happening super frequently in most cubes, I would imagine.
Yeah, if this card was like Rakdos or Izzet, it would be, or even Gruul, it would be tight. Like, I'd be so hyped for it. Like, I'm such a big fan of instant speed discard outlets. Like, I really look at them because I'm a fiend for like the Madness archetype and like Mayhem. Like, this does work quite nicely with Mayhem, because it's a discard outlet, and then the way Mayhem, unfortunately, is currently only in the Spider-Man set, which is the big drawback against it. But as a mechanic, it's cool. It's the one that it's the fixed Madness, but it goes to the graveyard and then you can cast it. That with Hardened Academic is quite good, but like, yeah, James is right. Like, this just can't go in a cube by itself, just with the hope that you're going to trigger it. Like you need to be pushing it at least in some way. Like yes, cubes will often have things like Faithless Looting or Firebolt, or things like Rally the Peasants if you're in a lower power level cube. But like, that's not enough. Like I need, like, for me to like this, I need to reliably be able to put a counter on it, at least one counter on it, to be happy. And like, yes, like with all these cards leave the graveyard, like, they also trigger off of things like Reanimation, Unearth, Delve, all that kind of stuff. Like, there's a bunch that does it, but just like specifically these two colors are the hardest. If it was splashing with one other, if it was touching with one other, I would like it a lot more. But like, again, potentially one for the future. Like we did touch on Relic Retriever in the last episode, and how that kind of, there has been some cards printed recently that do things with this, but it's nowhere near deep enough to take it much further right now. If this was legendary, I would build a commander deck with it, for what it's worth.
Yes, that checks out. That would be cool. But maybe, yeah, I guess if you were to try and make it work, maybe the discard matters thing is the way, because it is a discard outlet itself. There are a few cards in that deck which kind of already do this and enable it pretty well. So Currency Converter enables this really nicely, right? You discard the card, then you exile it from the graveyard. That triggers this, and that can potentially happen multiple times a turn. So that's quite nice, but it's a bit niche. You don't really have the redundancy to support this, I imagine.
Yeah, it's a cool one. We're just not there yet, unfortunately. Let's keep it going. We have another Lorehold card to go through. Next up, we have Lorehold Charm. This is a red and a white for an instant with a bunch of different modes, and you get to choose one of them. You can choose each opponent sacrifices a non-token artifact of their choice. You can choose return target artifact or creature card with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, or you can choose creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain trample until end of turn. If you're going really wide in Boros, like if you're doing a tokens deck or just putting a bunch of cheap creatures onto the board, then I kind of like this card because it feels like a main deckable sideboard card. Like, I really, really like instant speed ways of killing your opponent out of nowhere. I think like the kid in me likes things like Trumpet Blast, where you can just make an attack and then, haha, I win out of nowhere. That's really cool. I do like that. +1/+1 on this isn't the biggest bump in the world, but the trample is really nice. And for me, that's the kind of ability that I think, if it's going to get into, like, that's why you would put it into your deck. What I mentioned about this being a playable sideboard card is because the first two abilities feel very sideboardy. Like, an Edict's effect for an artifact will be situationally amazing, but you wouldn't put it in your deck by itself. Like, if you're in a powered cube and you come up against the Tinker deck, this will be great. But most of the time, you're never going to use that ability. Renovating a small artifact or creature is the second ability. That will be nice in some decks, but again, you're not running that in a main deck. But when it's combined as a whole package, the fact it's an uncommon means I am here for it a little bit. Like maybe Peasant Cube, something like that will be the place. Maybe Budget Cubes. Because like the one other issue that is worth touching on though is that because it's a gold card, and it's a gold card that's generically good, it's not leading me down something. It means that it's competing against the other generic good instance in Boros. Like, do I want this? Do I want Boros Charm? Do I want Lightning Helix? When you're kind of on that kind of angle, it gets a bit trickier. But I think it's a fine card, and like it, if it has that synergy of it will make my token deck better, then that's probably where I could say getting in. But James, what do you think about this charm for Lorehold?
Yeah, similar to you, I sort of struggle to imagine wanting this to be the Boros gold card I went for, you know? Like, yes, you do want some amount of sort of artifact destruction in your cube, fine, but I would kind of rather use my monocolored slots for that and have my gold slots be something a little bit more directional, a little bit more powerful, that's really telling you what the color pair is aspiring to do. So in Peasant Cube, for example, you could have this as your go wide payoff, or you could have something like Heroic Reinforcements, which is the 4-mana one, which makes 2 1/1s, give all your dude +1/+1 haste, you get in for a ton of damage that turn. I kind of prefer that sort of angle where we have a little bit more power level towards what we're trying to do rather than the modality. Not that this is a bad card, but I struggle to imagine this being where I want to go with my Boros gold slots.
No, I think that's a very good point. Yeah, it's whenever we talk about gold cards, we just have less of them. Like in my cube, I have 65 black cards, but I only have 6 Dimir cards, for example. Like, it's just that there's just less slots and there's more things for them to compete with. But if I saw it in a lower powered level cube, I wouldn't be like, what is this doing here? That is incorrect. I would assume that there is a counter, like that I will get some use out of it. So I think it can get in if you have a reason to put it in and if you have a use for it. And I think that would be the go wide. But let's keep it going, James. We have one last Boros card. I'm still going to call it Boros, even though the word Lorehold is literally in the name of the card. But this does seem like, fine, I'll say it, a Lorehold gold card I could get behind.
Yeah, this one kind of slaps. So this is a Lorehold the Historian. This is 3 a white and a red, so 5 mana total for a 5/5 legendary creature Elder Dragon. It has flying and haste, so 5 mana 5/5 flying haste. So that's already a hell of a beater. It says each instant and sorcery in your hand has Miracle 2, so that's you may cast it for its miracle cost when you draw it if it was the first card you drew this turn. So first card you draw this turn, If it's an instant or sorcery, you can cast it for 2 mana. And at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. 5 mana, 5/5 flying haste is just a hell of a beater. That's going to get them dead really quickly. That's already not far away for most cubes. Plus the ability to rummage on each upkeep. And the fact you get it in your opponent's upkeeps, you get it right away. So even if they have the removal spell, they're just going to untap and kill this, you're still getting a rummage out of it. That's really, really nice. The miracle text will come up. I suspect it is not really worth building around too much on this card. I wouldn't really be thinking in terms of, let's put some expensive instants and sorceries in my deck and try and stack the top of my deck. But it's a cool ability. Occasionally you'll get some use out of it. Maybe you have a brainstorm and you can set it up. Who knows? But yeah, mostly I think this is a beater. It's powerful. It probably doesn't make it into probably wouldn't stick around in like Powered Cube, I think, just because there are so many really, really powerful Boros Gold cards in sort of a similar point on the curve as well, right? Like, would you rather have this or Othari? I think I'd rather have Othari, right? Obviously, for Comet, for Fairlingus, there's so many powerful options in Boros. So I think sort of super, super high power level, this maybe doesn't make it in, but most cubes, this will be a very strong inclusion.
James, I think I found where we differ because all my notes are about casting miracle cards.
Okay, great. Tell me about it.
No, everything you are saying is correct. Oddly, the part I like least about this card, from a design point of view, is that it's a 5/5. Part of my notes was I would love this in a lower power level cube if it was like a 2/6 or something like that.
Yeah. No, give me this effect on like a 3 mana 1/4, and I'm really here for it.
No, exactly. Because here's the thing of I really, really like the casting big spells deck, and this does do a solid job of that. It's not Dream Holes and it's not Mizzix Mastery, but we are lacking redundancy in that effect, and the fact that the base level of this card is that it is a 5/5 flying haste means that the reality is they'll probably be dead from combat damage before you start popping off with your 2 mana ultimatums. But I still like that being a possibility. The thing with most cubes is that there just isn't really the reward in a spell point of view. But the Miracle 2 doesn't reduce the cost of enough spells in a cube for it to make it worth it. But if you're doing that big expensive spells deck, then it does. Because in a super high power level cube, again, we mentioned the cards already. They're not trying to cast temporal manipulation that's 5 mana because they have Time Walk that's 2 mana. That doesn't that in a cube with a Time Walk, this just color fixes. It's the same mana cost. It's just 2. Whereas in a cube where your extra turn spell is 5, you're actually getting some effect from it here. That cost reduction actually does something. If you're in a cube where you are casting ultimatums that are a bunch of mana, that does make a difference. And in those environments, I would want to test this. And again, I always said, if you have cards like Brainstorm, Jace, Sensei's Divining Top, or even Mystical Tutor, if you have ways of setting it up and that's what your deck is doing, then I think this is quite cool. But I do agree that from a, this is nowhere near as powerful as Fourth Aelingus, the Bloody Dog, Athari. It's nowhere near as good as those. But those are cards that I've removed from my unpowered vintage cube because they're not fun. And this card makes me feel something, James. So yeah, I could see myself testing this in. It probably shouldn't go in my unpowered vintage cube. It should go in my slower treat yourself cube. There, it will have more of a place. But yeah, I want to try it and I want to do some cool stuff with it. But yeah, if it just is just efficient and at flying death, I would not be surprised.
Yeah, I think it is a really cool effect. It's just one where the rest of the card, like the 5/5 flying haste part, leads you in a very different direction from the text. Each instance and sorcery card in your hand has Miracle 2, And I suspect that you win more if you follow the stats direction than the Miracle direction,
Yes, no, I know. I do agree. This is the only of the Elder Dragons from this set we're talking about this episode. Well, in any detail, we've mentioned the Quandrix one and we've mentioned the Prismari one. These are in the standard set, but these are more with Commander in mind, I think is the fair way of putting it. Like, this is a miracle Commander more than anything else. Like, this was not designed for Cube. Or it was, but as a 5/5 flyer with upside. That's why it was designed for Cube. But hey-ho.
Yeah. Mostly what I think when I look at this is like, Stormbreath Dragon got one bigger. Cool.
Yeah, fair. All right. We're moving on to Quandrix, James. It's me, actually. Let's talk about Quandrix Charm. This is a green and a blue. For an instant, choose one. And there are 3 options. You can either counter target spell unless its controller plays 2. You can destroy an enchantment. Or target creature has power and toughness 5/5 until end of turn. So another nice flexible spell. With this, I like the counterpart probably the best. We have that in mono blue pretty commonly, but that counterspell is why it could get in a deck. Similarly to the Lorehold Charm, the destroy target enchantment will be situationally amazing, but you wouldn't main deck just a naturalize in most cubes. And then the bottom ability is effectively a combat trick. I am a fan of getting more combat tricks into cube, but so that is a nice little lever you can run. But yeah, I think primarily it's getting in as a 2-mana counterspell with a different kind of upside. Like Miscalculation has cycling. This has a disenchant and a pump spell. That's interesting. Like we do also have to mention, again, similarly to the Boros one, that because this is a generic card, it's competing against other spells that do a similar thing. Like Simic Charm is a decent comparison, but I do think the counter on Quandrix Charm is a bit nicer. That's it for kind of modal spells. Like other Simic instances we have that we see often are things like Growth Spiral, which is card draw and ramp, or like Oral Procession, which is a regrowth effect. There is oddly less options than Boros in terms of just like what the card is generally doing. So maybe in a Peasant Cube, this might just be one of the better instants. If you want an instant in your Simic section, maybe you are doing that Miracle Grow type deck. Maybe that's where this could get in. But yeah, fine card, not pulling up too much trees. What do you think of Quandrix Charm, James?
Yeah, certainly not a weak card. Yeah, I mean, mostly viewing this as sort of quench with upside, but that combat trick is not bad, especially if you're sort of more cheap creatures. And in the sort of growing, the Miracle Grow deck you were discussing, it's specifically nice, right, because they're small creatures that get counters on them. So when they have base power toughness 5/5, you're giving them like +4/+4, which is pretty good if it's 1/1 base with a bunch of counters on it. Yeah, mostly it's quench with upside. The thing I think is a little bit tricky is that the counterspell really wants to be cast early, because quench does go dead pretty quickly, and that plays slightly awkwardly with the fact that this is a gold card and therefore slightly harder to cast, and sometimes you won't have the mana on turn 2. Yeah, it's kind of a similar thing to the Boros Charm, really. I know it's not called Boros Charm, Lorehold Charm. Yeah, like not a weak card, but I probably have more exciting things to do with my gold slots. And and really like what Simic is doing in a lot of cubes, even if I'm looking for that sort of cheap instant, maybe something like a Growth Spiral is in most cubes going to be a bit more what Simic is doing, right, than this sort of more temporary spell, really.
Yeah, cool one. I agree. I think because the counter is something that's a bit more generic, like generically good. It doesn't need like a tokens deck like the Lorehold one to actually sustain it. Like this could just slot into a bunch of cubes and be fine, which is nice. This next one, James, I quite like this card. Talk to us about Dina's Guidance. We're moving on to not Golgari. What's it called?
Witherbloom.
Witherbloom, thank you. We're moving on to Witherbloom. Talk to us about Dina's Guidance.
Yeah, for sure. So Dina's guidance is 1, a black and a green, so 3 mana total for an instant. It says search your library for a creature card, reveal it, put it into your hand or graveyard, then shuffle. So 3 mana for tutor a creature to your hand isn't really good enough, right? Because we have stuff like Aldamri's Call that's cheaper if we just want cheap creatures, or we have just straight 3 mana tutors in black, which obviously have more flexibility. They can get non-creatures as well. But this also gives us the option of using it as a expensive entomb, which is pretty nice. We don't get tons of those. And having it stapled as an option onto your tutor is pretty nice. It's also an instant. We like that a lot. And for super high power level cubes, this is probably just going to be, 1 mana too many. But if you're a tiny bit slower than that and you have some graveyard shenanigans going in on your Golgari section, then I think this could be quite nice. Because we don't get many put a card directly into your graveyard from your library effects, right? There's not a ton of them. There's like Lively Dirge is sort of the other decent one. That was the Spree one from whichever set had Spree.
I do not remember Lively Dirge. Oh, that one. Oh, yeah. It was from Outlaws, but Outlaws had a better tutor in it, so we kind of forgot Lively Dirge.
That's fair. Yeah, but this card I think is pretty solid. Like, I can imagine it in a slightly slower synergistic graveyard. Maybe you're doing like Recurring Nightmare, Feronian Nightmare, that sort of stuff. Or, you're just putting your Hogak in your bin. Whatever it might be. I could imagine this card doing a bit of work.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is effectively a split card where both halves are not as good as the bits we have. But combined, I think it's probably good enough to at least test. Like 3 mana is a lot for a tutor, but the instant speed part is nice. Like I know green isn't really generally doing stuff at instant speed, but black will have removal that you could hold up, and if they don't do anything, pop this off. It's quite nice. Like the card I was thinking of from Outlaws was Pillage the Bog, which has seen a fair bit of play. Like that's a 2 mana sorcery that, if you're played the game effectively, means that it is a similar type of tutor. Like the end result is a tutor, basically. How do you think this compares to that card, James? Because Pillage the Bog has seen a fair bit of play.
Pillage the Bog, I think, is very strong, actually. Like, the difference between 2 and 3 mana is just really big, and that kind of goes in more decks because this does just hit creatures, right? So it's it doesn't go super well in your sort of multicolor soup control-y decks, which is quite often where you see a card like Pillage the Bog come up. And obviously this doesn't go in your combo decks that aren't creature-based. So Pillage, I think, is a much less narrow card in terms of where you can play it, but there will certainly be decks that want this a lot more than they want Pillage the Bog.
No, good. Yeah, I think that's fair. Right, we have a second Witherbloom cards for today with Professor Dillian Fell. It is 2 black and a green for a legendary planeswalker Dillian with 5 starting loyalty. It has a +2 of you gain 3 life. It has a 0 of you draw a card and lose 1 life. There's a -3 of destroy target creature, and a -6 of you get an emblem with whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. So, yeah, a 4-mana planeswalker with 4 abilities. This is basically Jace the Mind Sculptor. I do think this is an interesting card, and especially in slower cubes. Like in an ideal world, this comes down. We uptick to 7 loyalty, then the next time we ultimate. And then effectively we just lightning helix them for the rest of the game. That's okay. That will end games. The +2 outside of the ultimate, I'm not that hot on. So effectively to me, this is kind of a planeswalker that is coming down and is it's doing the Planeswalker things of it's giving us some card advantage and it's answering a creature. Base level, like the fact the base level of this card is a 4-mana sorcery to destroy a creature means that it is okay. The main issue for me with this card is that there's just a bunch of other Golgari Planeswalkers with very, very similar effects. Like there's a Grist, there's 2 Varaskas that are very comparable. Being honest, like if you open one in pre-release and you have a budget cube or a mid-powered level cube and you like it, add it because it will play fine. It's doing the Golgari things. It is effectively slow, grindy value. Like this can come down, it can answer a threat, it can stabilize you a bit, it can draw you some cards, and then if the game keeps going on and they can't answer it, it'll give you a way of winning the game. That part is cool, but that is very mid-rangey and grindy, and mid-rangey is not the word that best describes higher power level cubes. So for me, that's kind of where I think Dillion kind of lands for me. What do you think, James?
Yeah, that's fair. I think it's very solid. Firstly, it comes down with so much loyalty. 5 starting loyalty makes this really hard to kill. You can go straight up to 7 if you really want, but I think most of the time you're going to play this and either immediately get your card or immediately destroy something. Yeah, I like it in that it's 4-mana Planeswalker, it has a lot of loyalty, and it defends itself pretty well with that -3, destroying a creature. Things outside of a deck that has some sort of life gain synergies going on, the +2 and the -6 are both not really that good. Like the plan of, sure, you could go plus for first turn, and -6 for second turn, and then try and start plussing. But then you have Planeswalkers essentially done nothing for the first 3 turns, and then it's still not affecting the board, right? So I don't think you're actually going to do that very much. I think you're just going to use the 0, you're going to use the -3, and you'll occasionally use the plus, but the only reason you'll be using the plus is so that you get to minus again the next turn. That to me makes it's not a bad card. Like the rate is just pretty good here, but it's not a super exciting or cool card that makes me excited to put it in cubes, you know? To me, this is kind of like, you remember Obnixilis? The 5-mana Obnixilis?
Is that what, from Zendikar, that effectively draws you a card and kills something?
Yeah, exactly. Like
the most planeswalker-y planeswalker to ever planeswalker.
Exactly.
Yes.
I think outside of specifically a life gain deck, this is kind of 2026 Obnixilis, right? It costs 1 less because power creep, but it's kind of the same thing. It 0s to draw a card, it minuses to kill something. That's where we're at.
I'm now just trying to quickly look up if I have that Obnixilis in my modern bordered cube, because I feel...
Oh, you definitely should.
That card is perfect there.
Yeah.
What planeswalkers do I have? Quick caveat, dear listener. Of course, we have Liliana the Veil, Liliana the Last Hope, and obviously we have Obnixilis Reignited. Hell yeah. Proper planeswalkers. As you were talking about that, it is worth touching on that the emblem is technically half of a combo. Like, effectively, this is the ultimate is a Sanguine Bond, which does combo with cards like Exquisite Blood and Bloodthirsty Conqueror. There are some other ones, but those are the main ones. So there is a world where, in that example, I don't hate it as much. Like this with Bloodthirsty Conqueror in a cube lets you have that combo without having to put 2 do-nothing enchantments in.
But it's just so unreliable to get it to be the Sanguine Bond, right?
We are in a very slow cube, James. like I personally think that like the Magecraft, like Chain of Smog stuff, it's really like I don't think that belongs in high power level cubes personally. But it's another angle you can do stuff with, and like that is interesting. Like it's not nothing. For some people, that will be like why they like this card and why they want to run it in a cube. Worth mentioning, I think. But
I could see running it to have a little bit of redundancy for your Sanguine Bond.
Yeah,
I kind of get that. And most of the time it's just a good planeswalker, and it also has that extra little mode, which is nice. That makes you run it like that. That makes sense to me. I wouldn't be running this instead of Sanguine Bond to make that combo work. I think if you want to do that combo, you should play Sanguine Bond.
Yeah, I'd go with that. Dude, I really shouldn't have Googled Sanguine Bond combos. There's a rabbit hole. What does Diamond Valley do? Right, we need to get off this. All right, who is it? James, I'm going to say it's you. It is you, marvellous. James, take it away with Silverquill Charm.
Yeah, for sure. So Silverquill Charm is a black and a white for an instant. It says choose one. You can put 2+1/+1 counters on target creature. You can exile target creature with power 2 or less, or you can have each opponent lose 3 life and you gain 3 life. This is a split card of a pretty good trick, a pretty bad removal spell, and a card you will only use when your opponent is on 3 or less life. I kind of feel similarly about a lot of these charms, to be honest, that I think there are better options, but they are fine. Like, I think this one specifically I would like if my black-white deck was leaning aggressive, because I do think that combat trick mode is kind of the most pushed. 2 mana for 2 counters is not bad at instant speed. The removal will have games where it's good. It will have games where it has no good targets at all. But that's kind of the upside of having the flexibility, right? That you'll normally find something good to do with this. But it's not a card that gets me super excited.
No, I'd agree. The one thing I did want to mention just specifically with this card is that oddly, Orzhov does have less instants than the other colors that do different things. Like, they have a lot of instants that remove something, but less flexibility. So if you were looking for a flexible Orzhov spell, a charm, if you will, then I think this is a perfectly solid option. Like the counters is really good. Like, why is this not Selesnya isn't in the set, but you know what I mean? Like, this would be a great green-white card, but as it is, a fine Silverquill card. Marvellous. All right, let's keep it going. We're moving on to, I'm going to say Quandrix. Was I right? No.
Try again.
Prismari.
Very
yeah,
good.
We're doing it. We're doing it. I only have to remember this once every 3 years. But all right, we're moving on to Quandrix. Focus.
No, we're not moving on to Quandrix.
Oh, damn it. All right. Prismari. All right, I really should. It's not my fault the first card isn't Prismari Charm. The first card is Sanar Unfinished Genius. It is a Quandrix. No. It is a blue and a red for a 0/4 legendary creature, Goblin Sorcerer. It enters prepared, and it has tap, create a treasure token, activate only if you cast an instant or sorcery spell this turn. The spell it casts is Wild Idea, which is 3 blue and a red for a sorcery that says, search your library for an instant or sorcery card, reveal it and put it into your hand, then shuffle. So I think this card's nice. Like, it is an uncommon, and for me, Peasant is where I think this could see some play. We've seen a card like Stormkiln Artist be fine in things like Commander. That's like a 4 mana 2/2 that makes a treasure whenever we cast an instant or sorcery. I think that's better in Commander at making treasure and ramping, because that's what a lot of that format is revolves around now. For me, this card actually I think is playable in Cube. In lower powered cubes, I don't hate a wall anywhere near as much. They give the slower decks time to breathe. They let them continue with their game plan against the aggro deck, which is nice. But they do have to do something, though. We can't just run an 0/4. Fortunately, it's 2026, and this card does something. For me, this is better in a control deck that's holding up instant speed, card draw, and counter magic. Like, specifically, I want to block with this on my opponent's turn, and then cast a spell, and then tap it to make a treasure. If we're doing that, I am happy with it. I don't want to have to cast a sorcery and tap it on my turn to make a treasure and not have this card around to block. The reason I'm playing an 0/4 is because I want it to be able to block. The Wild Idea sorcery part of this is nice. Again, if we're in a lower power level cube, we're not really getting anything super broken. Like, we're going to get some big bit of card draw, maybe a big burn spell to finish them off, something like that. But it being free on a card that I'm kind of okay with in that power level, I think is nice. Like for me, I think the base creature is fine enough if we have that density of instants to cast on our opponent's turn that we can then do the tap on their end step, that kind of stuff. I think solid card. In those lower power level environments, I think I'd be tempted to give it a test.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. I quite like this. In the sort of slower multicolor spells-based control decks, trying to get up to a lot of mana, like those decks would often really like to play some mana dorks if they could, but you're not green, you don't get mana dorks. This kind of is a mana dork, except tapping to create a treasure is way more powerful than tapping for mana, right? Because you get to store up that mana over multiple turns. It's mana of any color. It's really nice fixing in your Jeskai, your Grixis control decks. I think this can be really, really nice. On top of that, it blocks phenomenally well. 2 mana 0/4 is going to blank a lot of their threats. It's going to survive a lot of their burn spells. The only downside, as you mentioned, is you will, if you're playing sorcery speed, it kind of makes you choose between, do you want the blocker or do you want the mana this turn? Whereas if you're playing instant speed, obviously you can block, cast your instant, make the treasure on there and step. Plus, on top of that, it gives you a mana sink to use mana for later, right? If you're flooding out a little bit or the game's just gone super long, this is a really nice place to put 5 mana. It's going to get you whatever you need, whether that's a removal spell or whether it's a card draw spell. I really like this for Peasant Cube. And probably honestly some more mid-power level cubes with some rares wouldn't hate this either. Because quite often the blue-red gold cards we get are often aggressive prowessy creatures, but then sometimes the blue-red decks we draft are slow controlling decks that don't actually use those prowessy dudes that well, And this is a 2 mana blue-red creature that lets you lean into that slower, more controlling, higher curve spells deck.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. Generally, yeah, I think Sanar is a pretty solid little lad. Our last spell of the day, but not our last card, James, I'm quite high on. Talk to us about Traumatic Critique.
Yeah, this is a pretty good one, I think. So, Traumatic Critique is X, a blue, and a red for an instant. Says Traumatic Critique deals X damage to any target. Draw 2 cards, then discard a card. So this is a nice little value card. It's going to help you enable both your spells matter stuff, also maybe your discard matter stuff if that's something you're doing. Blue-red for an instant speed charter course, if you're just going for X as 0, is already pretty playable. There's a lot of Izzet decks that would be interested in that. And it ramps up from there. The more mana you have, you can make this into a pretty nice sort of cantripping removal spell, which is going to be very powerful late game. The removal part is probably expensive enough that I'd be surprised if we saw this in Vintage Cube specifically, but anything below that, I think this is very reasonable. Very flexible, works well at any point of the curve. Because even on turn 4, you draw 2, discard 1, kill their 2 drop. That's not bad.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah, as you said, it's an early game charter course or mid game. Because it can just go any target. I'm really high on that. It just means it can take out a troublesome planeswalker. It can take out a utility creature. It can take out broadside bombardiers, that kind of stuff. And then late game, it's just an instant speed fireball. That's not terrible. I like that effect, and I like the idea of just, it's late game. It's late game. I have 9 mana. They're on 7. Cool, I win. I'm kind of here for that. Izzet also has more room for instant and sorceries in its gold section than other colors, and it kind of does what an Izzet spell, what we need from an Izzet instant sorcery. It draws us a card, and it deals some damage to something. I'm kind of here for it.
Yeah, for sure. It's really good flexibility, right?
It seems like a good one. I'm glad my wife opened one at pre-release because I'm going to ask her nicely to steal it.
Yes. Put it this way, for the gold high flexibility spell slot, I like this more than all the charms.
Yes, 100%. Yes, I would definitely agree. Yeah, this one seems cool. All right, our last card of the day, James, is Great Hall of the Biblioplex. It is a land that taps for a colorless. You can also tap it and pay 1 life to add 1 mana of any color, spend that mana only to cast an instant or a sorcery spell, and you can also pay 5 generic. If this land isn't a creature, it becomes a 2/4 wizard creature with, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, this creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn. It's still a land. I think this is a cool card. Like, we've seen similar effects like this before, like, but for different things. So there's like lands that color wash our planeswalkers. There's ones that color wash allies. Let's not worry about those. I think there's ones that does artifacts as well. But on top of that, it's also a creature land, which is also pretty solid. Like effectively, it's combined 2 things that we like color washing for a thing and becoming a creature. Those are two effects that we have seen before and generally like in Cube. With that being said, like, I think it does need to go into a spells heavy cube to be good. Like, or I guess a cube that's supporting lots of colors and you have a spells deck. By that I mean kind of like you're doing like a 3-color cube and like you want to give every deck an additional way of fixing, and like the spells deck, maybe it's in Jeskai or Grixis, for example. After you've done your triomes, you then give it this as well for a bit of extra juice, something like that. I think it's fine. I do think you need to be very heavy on spells to cast it. There is it's just because it's cube and we can't like if we knew we were going to draw this, we could really get splashy with our instant and sorceries, and that I like. I like the idea of like splashing a counter spell effect in my black-green deck, or in my or the classic splashing a time walk in my aggro deck. The classic. In those, like it's just not reliably having ways to tutor it is the tricky part in most decks. Yeah, fun card. James, is there anything I'm missing on this one, or are you a bit higher on it?
Yeah, I quite like this. I think in most sort of spells-based decks playing more than 2 colors, this is going to be pretty solid. Especially if, the cards we're splashing are instants and sorceries, not creatures, then, say we're a base blue-red deck, we're splashing, like a Fractured Identity and a Mind Twist, for example. This is then really nice because it is way better than putting a Plains in our deck for a Fractured Identity, or putting a Swamp in our deck for a Mind Twist, because it casts both of those, and it casts all of our blue and red spells. And often you do draft, controlling decks in Cube where you're super heavy on instants and sorceries, and you maybe end up with only a couple of cards that this doesn't cast. And normally I don't love cards that involve paying life in control decks, but this does also tap for a colorless. So it's not like that City of Brass sort of land where if you play it early, it's just going to deal you a ton of damage over a game. This, once you have found your other lands that fix your colors, you can then just tap this without paying for a colorless. Final thing to point out, this ability that makes it a creature does not say until end of turn.
Oh, hold on.
Yeah.
Okay, they've arena'd me. Okay.
They sure have.
Yeah, okay. That's spicy, actually. Okay. Yeah.
So I quite like
that's a very
this
good point. Okay, I missed
in
that,
a control deck, because normally with creature lands, right, they make you do it at sorcery speed, right? Because you've got to do it on your turn to attack with it, and then your tap's out. With this card, you can just hang out, hold up your counter spells, whatever, and then in their end step, you make it a creature, and then now it's a creature for the whole game. And I can imagine playing some control decks where this is my only win condition.
Yeah,
and that'd be great.
I've lost to decks where the only win con is Celestial Colonnade, and I'm getting flashbacks.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So yeah, I think this is cool.
That's quite spicy, actually.
Yeah. My only criticism of it is that they started it with if this land isn't a creature. And the reason they did that is you can't do the cool Raging Ravine trick. So with Raging Ravine, you could activate it, make it a creature, and it gets a counter when it attacks. If you had tons of mana, you could like double activate it, and it would get 2 counters, which would be cool. So if it didn't have that text, you could get like double prowess triggers, which would be dope. But Wizards say it's fun, so we're not allowed that. But I think this card's still really cool, and I think I'm going to run this in some cubes.
In my defense, things not saying end of turn is normally reserved for like unsets. There's like a bear punch from an unset which doesn't say end of turn, that kind of stuff. And also, I'm looking at the art. How does the land come to life? Let's not worry about it. Let's wrap it up there, I think. All right, but I think that's where we're going to end it for today. Before we get you all out of here, because I've just thrown this at James, I'm going to go first. We're going to touch on just the cards over the 2 episodes the cards that we're thinking of testing in our own cubes. For me, like the obvious slam dunk tests is a card like Erode. We touched on that last week. That's the new Path to Exile, Source to Plowshares. It's 1 mana. It's 1 mana to destroy a target creature or planeswalker. We think that one's probably going to be seen a lot of play everywhere. Similarly, in terms of just like generically very strong, you have a card like Flow State, and nice cantrip card draw spell. Going to see a bunch of play. For me personally, the cards on top of those that I'm thinking of testing, like I want to try Flashback. I know, like we discussed yesterday, it's not as good. We discussed last time, kind of not as good as Snapcaster, but it being red means it's going to be open to some more decks. I'm quite excited to try it. I opened an Emeritus of Abundance, so I'm going to try that. That's the one from this week, the Regrowth. And also, like honestly, like I'm quite high on Traumatic Critique, the Prismari card we just talked about. Like, I think it's going to be quite cool, and because my cubes are a little bit slower than the most balls to the wall power cubes, I think there's going to be more time for the actual burn them out to be more relevant. And I think that, like, in those kind of cubes, I think that's going to be quite a cool little card. James, how about yourself? Anything that stood out to you from like a fun point of view, or anything you're thinking of trying in either your vintage cube or your dual commander cube?
Yeah, to agree with most ones you said, I think Galaxy of Road is the one that's just become an instant staple from this set, right? But I like the Emeritus of Ideation. I think it's cool that you get to cast Ancestral Recall, and the card is quite strong. I'm pretty interested in Sanar, the blue-red legend. I think I'm going to give it a try in dual commander cube. Because I think the way blue-red decks play out in that cube, I think they're going to quite like having 2 mana 0/4 tap make a treasure on turn 2 every game. I think that's quite powerful. Just in terms of like having that super consistent acceleration fixing, I think can enable you to do some interesting stuff with the rest of your deck, and getting the tutor in a cube with a bunch of combo stuff is pretty powerful too. I'm probably going to try the Civic Wayfinder, the 2 mana Civic Wayfinder in some cubes as well, but we'll see how good it is. In my mind, that card is busted, but I'm aware it doesn't look as exciting as everything else, but I've cast enough Skittering Surveyors in my time, and this is a lot better than Skittering Surveyor.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think that's very fair. I think the other thing we should also probably touch on is I'm just going to do a double check and make sure Displacer Kitten's in all my cube, because that's the most improved card, I would say.
Yeah, for real. I love Displacer Kitten so much. I think is another reason just to add a bunch of these prepared cards and see which ones stick, you know?
Yeah, so the cards I mentioned are the ones that I'm personally high on testing, but there's a world where we just test most of the Emerituses. Like the black one comes in and casts Demonic Tutor.
Black ones, I'll probably put the black one in dual commander cube, because I'm already doing a big aristocracy thing. This kind of plays into that, and I think expensive tutors are kind of a good place to be in that cube because I don't want to make everyone's decks too consistent.
Exactly.
But I do want people to be able to do their combo nonsense.
I'm exactly the same spot with my treat yourself cube. Like, I want to have those big splashy effects. I want people to treat themselves, but I don't want them to do it on turn 1 or 2. You know, you want them to kind of have time to grow into the game and then do it. So I think for me, the emeritus that I haven't opened might have to wait until my next proxy order because of money. But I think they just seem. They're probably like the headliner cards from this set in terms of, well, I mean, look, here's Ancestral Recall. You know, it's going to sell some packs. But I think that's going to do it for today. James, pleasure. That was a good chat. There's a bunch of cool cards from this set. And I'm very happy to return to Strixhaven. Was a fun one.
Yeah, for sure. Always a pleasure.
Marvellous. All right, we'll be back next week with another banger episode. Do make sure you like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Tell a friend. Greatly helps us out, do cool and new and interesting things. But until then, it's goodbye from me, that's goodbye from James, and we'll see you all soon. Goodbye.